Because now you're going to be injecting complementary plastics alongside the anabolic androgenic steroids which you actually purchased. Vigorous Steve here with a couple signs so you can easily tell if your gear is trash. And when I say trash, I mean absolute trash, ready for the garbage bin. And if you recognize any of these points which we'll discuss in this video, just throw this gear away. You will save yourself a lot of problems in the future. I mean, I wish I threw away the Trenbolone and DNP and the Kisspeptin 10. I mean, that was a waste of syringes. Didn't do anything. So I wish I threw a lot more gear away than I've used in the past. A little bit stubbornly and often reluctantly, I persisted through particular protocols, knowing in the back of my head that this gear was trash. So let's discuss all of that in this video. Before we get into it, please like the video, leave a comment for the algorithm, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. Now, many of these signs you'll be able to pinpoint within one injection, and some of them you don't even need to inject anything at all. So let's start there. If you go shopping online for anabolic androgenic steroids, and you make your purchase, and a couple weeks later, your package arrives in the mail. You open your package expecting to see vials, but a shampoo bottle shows up. It's a bit sketch, to be honest. If you buy vials, or expecting that vials would be arrived in whatever stealth packaging this source provides, and the contents of what you've purchased has been transferred over to a shampoo bottle, or whatever else is considered to be stealthy nowadays, a shampoo bottle is generally speaking not sterile, it doesn't come under vacuum, and some of the plastics of a shampoo bottle can leak into the carrier oil if it contains a lot of solvents. And even benzoyl benzoate might be able to leak some of the plastics from the shampoo bottle and suspend that in the oily solution, which you're now going to inject. If it comes in a shampoo bottle that's made of glass, and if you feel that the source has done its job to ensure the sterility of your product and prevent any contaminants from entering the glass shampoo bottle, still, I would transfer the content to sterile vials, make sure that that undergoes a sterilization or pasteurization process, and while you're transferring, use a Wattman filter or any kind of filter that would remove contaminants could be present within this glass shampoo bottle. For me, it's a huge red flag. I would rather throw it away and stick to pharmaceutical grade. But I also understand that this might be the only way for some people to acquire gear, especially if they live in very steroid-phobic countries like Sweden or Australia, for example, where the rules against personal steroid use are so disproportionate and astronomically unfair that this is basically the only way for people to source gear online or even through domestic sources. Now, if your gear arrives crashed, or it starts to crash a little bit later when you put it in your steroid drawer for safekeeping, it's also a bit of a red flag. It doesn't necessarily mean that your gear is trash. It could be that the gear is produced in a country with a little bit hotter climate, allowing more anabolic androgenic steroid with an ester to be suspended in a carrier oil with a decent amount of solvent. But then you move that across the globe to a country with a colder climate, and now the oil cools down, the solvency of the solution is not as potent anymore, and the anabolic androgenic steroid with the ester crashes. It could also be because the raw powder has not been properly micronized, which can also cause steroids to crystallize easier. If you're not in a cold climate, and your steroids still crystallize or crash, it could be because it's not properly brewed. They put too much anabolic androgenic steroids in this solution. The concentration is too high, let's say 300 milligrams per milliliter, or even 400, 500 milligrams per milliliter. I mean, the only way to really suspend that properly is with a ton of solvents. And even then, if you move that to a colder climate, or for whatever reasons, these steroids start to crystallize because they haven't been properly micronized, the whole solution crashes. And the only real way to get these crystallized steroids back into solution, allowing you to actually use them, is by heating them up. Over and over and over again. How many times can you heat up steroids which are crashed before the polyurethane rubber stopper starts to leak into the solution, or something happens with the carrier oil where it turns rancid? How many times can you do that, guys? I mean, personally, I've run several experiments where I froze 1 ampule of Bayer testoviron with 250 milligrams per 1 milliliter concentration, or Bayer remibolans with a concentration of 100 milligrams per 1 milliliter, or Organon decadurabolans with a concentration of 100 milligrams per 1 milliliter. I throw them all in the freezer to see if they would crash, and they don't. Why? Because pharmaceuticals are brewed properly, and they understand that you can't put 500 milligrams of an esterified anabolic androgenic steroid in solution and transport that all over the world. Because there's only so many milligrams a product produced with organic carrier oil can hold. Now, the last sign you can pay attention to before injecting anything, and don't worry, I got way more signs for you to pay attention to. The last sign, if you see that your 10 ml vial actually contains 9 milliliters or less, trash it. Trash it right away and never support that source again. If you buy 10 milliliter vials, they should contain exactly 10 milliliters. And if your source is a little bit generous and smart, you will do the same thing that most pharmaceutical companies do, is overfill it a little bit to allow for waste. Most of the ampules of pharmaceutical grade companies are overfilled, containing 1.1, 1.2, sometimes if you're lucky, fingers crossed, 1.35 milliliters of testosterone or primobolan, right? It happened to me many, many times. It's not counterfeit. This is just a common practice with pharmaceuticals. They overfill the ampules, allowing the doctor to draw sufficient amounts for the administration and the prescription that they want to provide their patient, right? It's all used in medical settings. And if underground labs start underfilling their vials, man, trash. Throw it away. Never contact that source again. Tell all your friends that this source is shit. There should be at least 10 milliliters in a 10 milliliter vial, or 10.1 or 10.5. Not 9 milliliters. The last thing you want, let's say you do 1 cc per administration, and you're super careful, super neat, and you pay close attention to how much you're injecting. Every time you do an administration, you draw 1 cc. You do that 8 administrations in a row, right? Maybe over 3 or 4 weeks or so, for example. And then you're ready to draw your 9th cc. You start drawing, you get 0.5 milliliters. You kind of feel cheated, no? You didn't get what you pay for. I mean, besides the fact that the concentration might be lower also. Man, I've heard this horror story so many times. So, if it arrives, you get a nice thick 10 cc syringe. You draw it so you can measure it by yourself. If it's anything less than 10 milliliters, well, the product might still be good. But again, don't order from this source again, because he's cheating you, or she's cheating you out of your hard-earned cash. At your first administration, let's say you do 1 milliliter, and you don't notice anything within 1 or 2 days. Product is probably bunk also, because you should notice a difference, especially if you're experienced in the use of anabolic androgenic steroids. Serum concentrations peak within 48 hours, regardless of the carrier oil or regardless of the ester, because the benzoate and benzoyl alcohol act as a prodrug delivery method, because they don't need to be metabolized like the carrier oil does. The carrier oil is metabolized by lipases, and the benzoate and the benzoyl alcohol are metabolized through a different pathway. They disperse quite rapidly. They take their anabolic androgenic steroid with an ester attachment away from the carrier oil, putting that in the extracellular space, allowing it to be absorbed. Benzoyl alcohol leaves the injection depot within 52 hours. So you should notice a difference within the first 2 days of administration. If you don't notice a difference, your gear is probably trash. Now, I understand that if you don't have so much experience with steroids, you do your injection, you're like, nothing happened, I don't feel anything. I hear that from first-timers many, many times. But if you are experienced and you don't notice a difference, you don't notice a slight increase in libido or strength or vascularity, or just an overall sense of well-being, because now your androgen levels, right, assuming you're injecting your testosterone, your androgen levels are going up, you should notice a difference, right? Weight might go up slightly over the next 2 days after administration. And when I say nothing happens, it has nothing to do with the site of administration. You could still get crippling post-injection pain or redness or tremendous inflammation at that site, right? Don't worry, we'll discuss all of that a little bit later in this video. When I say nothing happens, it's purely about the positive results, the results you would expect, the results you would want from administering anabolic androgenic steroids, right? All the good stuff and none of the bad stuff. Within 2 days, I notice an effect. Again, I have experience. I know what a super physiological dose of testosterone feels like. I mean, it can also feel within 1 day, sometimes even within a couple hours. When DHT derivatives or the Trenbolone sandwich hits my system, I already get irritable. And the way for me to reduce the irritability is by going to the gym and raping and pillaging, right? Excluding the raping, but definitely pillaging. I make sweet love to the weights. It's something I can feel within the first day of administration, right? I want to go to the gym and train. So if you're unexperienced, you do the following. You do one administration and the next day you go in for blood work. Your serum testosterone levels should be sky high, assuming you injected a little bit more than TRT, right? If you're going to pin 100 milligrams, your testosterone might be somewhat physiological. But if you're pinning 250 milligrams of testosterone enanthate, cypionate, propionate, acetate, whatever ester you might prefer, within 1 day, your levels will be right undetectable in most ranges, at least over 1,500 nanograms per deciliter, in many cases 2,000, even 2,800, depending on how fast you're metabolizing this particular ester that you just injected. And then also depends on the carrier oil, like I mentioned in a previous video. Again, so if you're unsure, you do one injection, you go for blood work, that will kind of determine if your gear is trash or not. But if your levels are not trash, they're actually quite high. They're exactly where you would expect them to be from this single administration. And your endocrinologist gives you a call or pulls you into the office and raises an eyebrow and says your levels are very, very fascinating. Then at least you know that the active pharmaceutical ingredients are doing their job and you might want to continue with this particular brand of gear. Still, if something happens along the lines of test flu, run. Test flu doesn't exist, guys. Test flu is a made-up term from the anabolic steroid boards to describe systemic inflammation. Yeah, test flu does not exist. It doesn't matter how much test you pin. Look into Nebido, for example. It's a single administration of 1,000 milligrams testosterone decanoate, which should last anywhere between 4 to 12 weeks, depending on your TRT doctor. Nobody experiences test flu from Nebido. They experience a ton of aromatization within the first week of administration, but nobody experiences test flu. Test flu comes from the carrier oil. So if you do one injection of 250 milligrams testosterone enanthate, you've been off for a very long time. You feel a little bit off, you get some flu-like symptoms, your hands are all clammy, you start to sweat profusely at night, but you certainly didn't go on the Trenbolone sandwich. Now you get paranoid, you do your PCR or your rapid test, both are negative. So now you don't know what's up and down. Are you really getting sick? No, dude, it's the carrier oil. I've been trying to warn you guys about the carrier oils for several years now, and still I get messages about it. I mean, when is it going to end? Probably never. Well, maybe when the underground labs or the third world pharmaceuticals stop using these synthetic solvents to make their steroid formulations with. Again, I've been trying to warn you guys, but it's up to you if you want to listen or not. As soon as you experience test flow, throw that gear in the trash. One exception, if you have a product in MCT containing testosterone propionate, or falsely labeled DHB or primobolan, which are significantly more expensive, but actually contains testosterone propionate. Now you have a carrier oil that disperses quite rapidly. You will have a esterified steroid which metabolizes quite rapidly in most individuals. And now you have a burden of testosterone into your bloodstream within a couple hours after the administration. So that might give you a little bit of hotness and flu-like symptoms also, but that shouldn't linger. That shouldn't linger for days. That should go away within a couple hours. If the MCT oil easily disperses throughout the muscle, causing the testosterone propionate to metabolize rapidly, the burden of androgens on your system is going to go up within a couple hours and then come crashing down. So you see a lot of aromatization in this scenario where you're using a testosterone propionate formula brewed in MCT oil, administered in a muscle which allows for a lot of dispersion, increasing the surface area of this injection depot, allowing testosterone propionate to enter central circulation. You'll see a lot of aromatization. So while you might get a little bit hot and you feel a lot of energy going to the gym, so if you do this administration before going to the gym, at least you get to utilize all of these androgens which are now flooding your bloodstream. Right? You might sweat a little bit more profusely, but your workout capacity should increase also. And then within a couple hours after this administration, whatever testosterone doesn't get bound to the androgen receptor or sexual binding globulin or albumin gets metabolized into estradiol. So in this scenario, you would actually be able to check your serum estradiol levels if you feel that they're disproportionately higher compared to what you would otherwise see from a similar dose of testosterone propionate in another carrier oil, which doesn't disperse so rapidly and doesn't give you an internal body heat and, well, the need to go to the gym and rape and pillage, so to say. Then again, it might just be the carrier oil. The symptoms that you're experiencing is not due to the inflammation that is being caused, because again, MCT oil or another organic carrier oil doesn't cause systemic inflammation, leading you to believe that you're experiencing test flu. In this case, it's just the rapid metabolism of testosterone propionate and the fluctuations in serum testosterone concentrations, resulting in a higher estradiol level, which you should also be able to determine with blood work, maybe a week after doing frequent administration. So it's not exactly within 1 milliliter, but still, if you're really familiar with your body and how you metabolize these steroids, you might be able to inject testosterone propionate in MCT oil. And if you experience some of these flu-like symptoms, again, you go to blood work the next day. And by that time, the testosterone has largely already been metabolized. When you look at your blood work, you see that your testosterone is lower than you would expect, and your estradiol is higher than you would expect, right? It's a little bit more cumbersome to approach. Still, test flow, if it's longer than a couple hours, it's the carrier oil and not the product that you're using. This can also lead to swollen lymph nodes. Again, like I mentioned in the previous video talking about how steroids are actually metabolized in the body, approximately 15% of the estrophyte steroids ends up in the lymphatic system, which is all over the body. It's activated by movement. It's a huge part of the immune system, alongside the spleen and the thymus and a couple other different organs. The lymph nodes, particularly here in the neck, when you're injecting gear that is trash because it's unsterile, or the carrier oil is actually a toxic solvent, or the product contains some heavy metals or other contaminants, right? It all ends up in the lymphatic system. And if your lymph nodes are start to get swollen within 24 hours after administration, or maybe within a week or two of using this particular product, it's trash. Throw it away. It should not happen. You should not have clogged, swollen lymph nodes to the point you need a lymphatic drainage massage where they put a lot of pressure here and it feels highly uncomfortable, allowing the lymph fluid to end up into central circulation through the two veins that are in your neck. Right? They could be swollen in your armpits, in your groin, or wherever else there are lymph nodes. But in most cases, when your gear is absolute trash, it's just the two lymph nodes in your neck that are swollen tremendously to the point to look like a Gundam or Michael Jackson at the end of Moonwalker. Your face gets a little bit contorted because now you have two bulging things and, well, you start to look like a frog. Just another sign for you to pay attention to. And the last thing I want to discuss in this video is obviously the crippling post-injection pain. It never happened to me using pharmaceutical grade, whatever product, pharmaceutical grade never, ever, ever, ever gave me post-injection pain. And with Underground Labs, it's a little bit difficult to determine what the root cause of the post-injection pain is. Is it the carrier oil? Is it unsterile? Are there contaminants? Is it brewed with too many milligrams? Etc., etc., etc. Some of the plastics leaking into the syringe and now you're injecting it. A lot of things can go wrong. I mean, you're completely bypassing the natural immune system by injecting a foreign compound into skeletal muscle. And the last thing you want is crippling post-injection pain, preventing you from doing a workout properly, preventing you from walking properly, or in the worst case, causing you to be hospitalized because now you have an abscess that starts to grow a face and an arm and starts to offer to read your mind and tell your future that you want to get this abscess drained as soon as possible. Post-injection pain should never, ever, ever happen. Don't settle for less. It should never happen with estrophyte anabolic androgenic steroids. After switching to pharmaceutical grade, I've never had post-injection pain. I've had a little bit of bleeding. I might have had a little bit of swelling at high voluminous injections, but real crippling post-injection pain, never, ever, ever since switching to pharmaceutical grade. Now, that's not to say that pharmaceutical grade glutathione or vitamin C or testosterone suspension obviously can't cause post-injection pain. If your testosterone enanthate or boldenone or nandrolone or whatever else from the underground lab that you got in the mail or through a friend at the gym, if that gives you post-injection pain, it's probably trash. I hate to say it, just throw it away, dude. Don't suffer any more than you need to, because bodybuilding or administering steroids is already cumbersome enough. You don't want to make it any more difficult than it needs to be. Okay, I'll leave it at that. I hope this gives you guys some insights on what to pay attention to. Again, keep your trash bin empty. Don't be afraid to throw away gear or products when you get an adverse response, or if you feel it's a little bit dodgy, a little bit shady, and you don't really trust it, just throw it away. Really, just throw it away. It's okay to throw gear away if you don't have faith in it. And I'll leave it at that, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're looking for the most comprehensive guides to bodybuilding pharmacology, you can find the ebooks on my website, vigorsteve.com/shop. Personalized advice always available through consultations. You can find the rates in the consultation section. Follow me on Instagram and TikTok at vigorsteve. Have a look at my workout clips channel called Vigorous to the Max. You can find that in the link tree. You can also find a lot of sponsors and affiliates that I'm associated with in the link tree as well. I have a very dedicated article on my website called the Ultimate Source List, where you can just look for over-the-counter supplement XYZ. Whatever I discuss in any of these videos, there's probably a link and a discount code for it. So save yourself some money in the process if you're looking for something specific that I discuss on this YouTube channel here and there. Vigorous crew, I know you guys are still with me. You guys know what to do. A front double bicep for you guys. No signs of slowing down. No signs that my gear is trash. I'm growing, but to be fair, I increased the calories a little bit because I started to lose cognition after this prolonged caloric deficit. So now the gain train is moving right ahead, and the body fat is staying pretty much the same. All right, I'll leave it at that. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. And have a look at some of these videos while you wait for the next one to drop. See you guys then.